On London Real, we like to push the envelope on psychedelics. We went in and we drank ayahuasca, and it was the real deal.
Ayahuasca requires us to confront the truth about ourselves.
The psychedelic experience is one of the most, clearly the most influential, profound experiences in human existence.
Now we explore dimethyltryptamine.
Pure DMT powder, and smoke that, and this just, I mean, this is just a direct route straight to the spirit world.
How would we change this culture? And it felt to me like LSD and psychedelics were the way.
London Real presents DMT, before and after. Let's do this. Our lives will never be the same again. All right, here we go. Welcome to a very special edition of London Real. I am here with Mr. Alexander Ward, who you would have seen originally about a year ago, with this episode called The Chosen One, when he talked about his ayahuasca documentary. And he was most recently guest host when we had Dr. Robin Carhartt Harris, and he's a doctor who's doing MRI studies on the effects of psilocybin mushrooms and on MDMA in the brain. And today, Alex and I are going to explore dimethyltryptamine, also known as DMT, and the spirit molecule.
Yeah, that's often a nickname it's been associated with.
The spirit molecule,
That
right?
is indeed.
Okay. And Dr. Carhartt Harris said that the chemical difference between psilocybin and DMT, they were very, very similar chemicals, I believe.
Yeah, incredibly similar. And I think that can be attested to with people who have had kind of first-hand experience between these various different psychedelics, that there is a huge overlap, and many people report just having the exact same experiences with either of these psychedelics.
And DMT is the active component in ayahuasca.
Yeah, that is mainly what is responsible for the kind of amazing experiences people go through with the ayahuasca.
Right.
The main component of that is the DMT. And you can get the extracted, synthesized form of DMT, which is what we're here to talk about. Right.
So we are going to do something maybe a little controversial today. It's something Alexander and I have talked about for a couple months, and something that we are going to do today. We are going to discuss the basics of dimethyltryptamine, and then Alexander and I are going to make a quick plane trip to the continent where we will smoke DMT. My first time. Alex has done this 4 or 5 times, is that right? Then we're going to come back to London, and later tonight we're going to plug in and give you our experiences. I really don't know what to expect. I'm a little nervous. How are you feeling?
I'm okay with it. I think anyone who goes through this, they can not stop their hands from shaking the moment they go into a DMT experience, because it is such a great unknown, and it's perfectly natural to be quite intimidated by the experience.
Yeah, I think Terence Mckenna said there's a reason that when people go and take psychedelics that they have fear, and he said you don't see a lot of people that are going to meditate when their knees are knocking.
That's right.
Because and I say to people oftentimes when they're going to go into their first ayahuasca ceremony, I say you should be scared, because there are a lot of unknown things that you're probably going to confront. So I think it's a healthy thing.
Sure, especially with the psychedelics, you're forced to deal with things that are quite buried very deep within you. And I think in a certain sense, people know this about themselves. There's kind of hiding certain things about them. And through the psychedelic experience, everything in the unconscious is just brought right up into the conscious, and you're forced to deal with certain things about yourself that you may not be looking forward to. Yeah,
and so for the next half hour, Alex and I are going to talk about DMT, because I know a lot of people hearing that we are going to go and smoke some controlled substance in order to have a 15-minute mental experience are going to look at it as a narcotic, and we are here to discuss why we believe it's not. It's actually something called an entheogen, or things that are actually going to improve your life, and I'll talk a little bit more a little bit later about that. We also, as much as I dislike the fact that this is an illegal thing to do in the UK, I do respect the laws of the country I live in. We both do. So we are going to be traveling somewhere else to do this. And we also don't necessarily recommend you do this yourself without doing some research. But before we get into that, I was wondering, Alex, could you tell us a little bit more about DMT and the relationship that DMT and ayahuasca have?
Sure. I mean, the reason why I started to look into the actual extract of DMT was I was trying to look for similarities between the ayahuasca experience and DMT. And not only did I find it, I came into the exact same states of mind, but I actually continued on with a unresolved ayahuasca experience that I had in the jungle about a few months prior.
Okay, so so you basically had an ayahuasca experience. 3 months later, you smoked DMT, and you went back into that ayahuasca experience.
Yeah. You know, I did go through this ayahuasca experience, and I talked about it when I was on London Real once, but there was this instance with the ayahuasca where I'm surrounded by these kind of shamanic entities of some sort. This is all within my inner realm. This is not actually in the external reality. But in this vision with the ayahuasca, these shamanic ladies, they're kind of dipping this cup into me. And what they're doing is they're observing this essence of me that's made up of all my past experiences. And it's kind of this sum total of kind of who I am. And within this, they were just kind of observing it. But during one kind of dip into this essence, they kind of noticed that there was this kind of darkness within it. And we never really got any kind of conclusion about what that was, but it certainly affected my own inner world. And when I went through the DMT experience with the smoked extract, it was kind of a continuation of that same experience. I was surrounded by the same entities, and they were saying, you know, we really got to try and figure out what this is in you. And so we're kind of trying to go in to really find out what this kind of darkness was to me. And it had certain things to do with a kind of self-doubt mentalities, which can often lead to kind of a sort of self-hatred. And so we're trying to sort of pull that out, because we do all have these kind of inner dimensions to us. And
demons too.
Yeah, you know, when people encounter demons, they are visual manifestations of negative emotions they hold within themselves, because we all hold kind of certain emotions within us, and when we kind of keep hold of those negative emotions, they kind of run riot. And through the ayahuasca, you get this kind of visual representation of what those are.
I think with a lot of the public who isn't informed or educated about psychedelics, they hear a word like magic mushrooms, and they hear the visions people have, and they tend to associate it with a very recreational type experience. And maybe it is for some people, but for me, I'm at my 1 year anniversary since I first took ayahuasca, which I was terrified to do. I was really not comfortable with confronting my demons, but it has affected my character. I've done 3 ceremonies. It was March, August, and December, but it's affected my character in such a positive way, because I think I confronted these demons that I was holding inside, and that I was oftentimes, when I'd feel pain, I think I would, drink too much to medicate yourself. I think a lot of people do this, distract yourself from what the real problem is inside. And
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of substances and things like alcohol are a way to sort of get you away from yourself, but ayahuasca is a substance that makes you face things about yourself, and I think that's the main difference. Right,
it's like they said that certain drugs help you tune out, and then the ayahuasca makes you tune in maybe to a way that you're just not ready for, because it can,
and it can be very overwhelming for people.
Yeah, as I said, it's like putting a mirror up to your soul, and you get to see how you've been treating the rest of the world, and usually it's not good news.
Yeah,
that's the way I kind of describe it. But for me, it's made a big development in my life. I mean, I was 40 years old before I ever moved in with another woman, or became like more of a family person, and I attribute it all to ayahuasca. My better half will say it was her, but I have to say that the ayahuasca is a pivotal experience in my life, particularly the second one, and I think it makes me more calm today. It makes me more loving of others. It makes me more accepting of things that I can't control. So it's very powerful stuff.
Sure, and it's been very encouraging for me, because I've been on my travels for the past 8 or so months, and I'm getting a lot of contact with people who are working with this medicine, and just seeing the kind of transformations people are going through, becoming more compassionate people. And there is this whole element as well with psychedelics that it's used in kind of post-traumatic stress disorders. And I've had people contact me, say they were able to deal with certain traumatic childhood experiences and all of this. And and it is an interesting thing when you consider this is a banned substance. I think it's kind of in America it's Schedule 1, which the definition of is, well, one of the conditions of making it a Schedule 1 is it has to have no therapeutic use whatsoever. And I think as we've seen through the testimonials of other people, and with a lot of scientific research that's coming out now, it's that's not the case. And
it seems the most ridiculous thing to me to say.
Backwards.
Because 99 to 98% of the people I've ever met who have had, you know, psilocybin or ayahuasca experiences, I think they're better people because of it, you know, and then they act maybe 100%, you know. And maybe this is a throwback from the banning of LSD in 1966 in the States, when maybe it was just a backlash of fear that kept it out of the public eye for research for 30 or 40 years. But as we've seen now with Dr. Carhartt Harris, and if you haven't seen that episode, please watch it, because he is doing real clinical research where he is actually showing that these substances can help in depression, can help in a lot of repetitive behavior patterns. Like, I'm sure everyone listening to this have felt themselves in a cycle. They say the definition of insanity is repeating the same action, expecting a different result, but yet we've all done it. And Dr. Carhartt Harris, who is a researcher, he's not a user of these substances. He has said it's a definite way to break a cycle of behavior.
Yeah, it's really great to see. He does a lot of scientific studies on actually what happens in the brain when you go through. I think he did a lot of his research with the psilocybin mushroom, but again, these things have a big overlap. And I like the way he described it when he said, in the brain there are these certain hubs of information, and they collect information from various different parts of the brain into one cohesive whole. And what he said is the psilocybin kind of lowered the activity of these hubs, and he explained it as almost as if a conductor left the room in an orchestra. So now you're kind of dealing with a kind of unfiltered information, and he says this is the way how people find it very freeing and liberating, and also how people have this disillusion with ego, which is sort of how they've been conditioned to think about the world. It's kind of getting rid of that baggage and conditioning that you've been brought up with, and kind of being a bit more experimental with the information that's in front of you.
It's like almost everything that goes through your mind is processed, how that relates to my ego. You know, if you see something, it's like, okay, does that make me feel good? Does that make me feel bad? Does that validate my personality? Does it not? So I think with some of these substances, as Carhartt Harris is talking about, it removes that, and then you can, like you said, process the raw information for what it is.
Yeah, and I guess that's also why people see themselves for how other people might see them as well. They step outside of their, I've often said, it took me out of how I thought about the world and actually how it was instead. I was just kind of, my conditioning acted as a kind of filter for life, and to take that filter away and kind of see things from a different perspective. You
know, it's something that Simon Powell talked about with the psilocybin solution, and something Dr. Carhartt Harris talked about, where maybe someday there will be these clinics, you know, they maybe these like you would go to a spa for the weekend.
A rejuvenation center.
Yeah, where you would check in for the weekend, you would see a doctor, they would prescribe a certain amount of psilocybin or a certain amount of dimethyltryptamine. You would go into a comfortable room with comfortable music with maybe a nurse to watch over you, and for the next 8 hours you would explore parts of your brain and maybe confront some demons, and then you could come back on Monday, and as opposed to having a massage, you might have that kind of
a mental massage, a spiritual massage.
For me, it just seems like it's a no-brainer that these things would be a wonderful way for people to practice this in a safe way, a controlled way that would better society in a huge way. But I don't know, am I being a little idealistic?
No, I think that essentially is the conclusion a lot of people come to. When they see the power of the therapeutic use of this, they would naturally think that there should be some kind of centers that people can go to sort of, you know, have these inner journeys. And also for me, a lot of the psychedelic experience is about connection to nature. Right. So I think it's very important to have that aspect as well. And I do sometimes think when you're dealing with the extracted, synthesized forms of DMT and psilocybin as well, they kind of lose that important connection to nature. You know, there's something to be said about having the intention of, you know, going through the process of brewing the ayahuasca, or in the sense of psilocybin, you know, trekking through nature and getting your hands on the actual form of it.
Picking the mushrooms.
Picking, you know, understanding its origin. It's a kind of embodiment of kind of nature itself.
Yeah, so for people that don't know, the ayahuasca is made from 2 different plants in the Amazon, and they're boiled down over days, is that right?
I mean, you can do it in a day. I've been to places where they do it over 4 days, and it's just a level of concentration they want to get into the brew. And
some of the places you can go and you can make it yourself. Obviously, you're on a diet for usually 10 days, fairly strict diet. There's a whole ceremony, there's a shaman. It's something that's very respected, and I think it's a pivotal part of the experience to prepare your mind for what you're going to do. Now, we should talk about how DMT is not that. You know, Alex and I have not done any diet for this. There will be no ceremony that I'm aware of, and we will be smoking this extracted form of the DMT. And so what does that mean, in your opinion, as far as perceptions of it, and what is the reality going to be as in it comparing to an ayahuasca ceremony?
I do think a large part of the ritual practices with ayahuasca, the way you have a certain diet, you're prepared to do certain ceremonial actions, and it's taken at nighttime. I think it is, in a sense, a way of mentally preparing you. The way you actively do it in the physical sense is a way of mentally preparing you as well. So I think as long as you have that mental preparation beforehand, you kind of that's kind of one step towards going through the experience.
That's for the ayahuasca experience. Now with the DMT, we won't have that. So how will that alter the experience, in your opinion? What will if you had to try to describe someone what this will be like, what will this DMT experience be like, do you believe?
Well, I mean, firstly, just the actual experience itself, it's only 15 or so minutes. It's incredibly short. It's
been called the businessman's high in Amsterdam, because apparently you can take a lunch break, smoke DMT, go to where you're going to go, and be back and fairly sober within 15, 20, 30 minutes. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. It is all about set and setting, and I think that's what a lot of the ritual aspects of the ayahuasca is about. It is that kind of putting you in a very safe setting where you feel very secure, and if you can provide that by your own means, with the DMT experience, if you're in a safe, comfortable environment, then there's no reason why you can go through an equally positive experience with it.
Now, I mean, for us, we've talked about ayahuasca on London Real for a year now. I've had a lot of people ask me about DMT. We've had Simon Powell on to talk about psilocybin. We had Carhartt Harris. For me, this seemed like a bit of an elephant in the room. We've never addressed DMT. We've never talked DMT. We've never consumed DMT. So I'm glad that we're going to address this. But it does have a bit... When you tell someone you're going to smoke something that was extracted, that's I think it's a white powder.
It has a lot more connotations.
I think people view it as a narcotic. It's a Schedule I drug, so they're like, oh, you're going to do that drug. And so I would like to implore people that this is a way of potentially finding, finding out more about yourself, the world you live in, maybe finding peace, and that's what I think, for me, the psychedelic experience is about.
I think you're right.
And when people describe the DMT versus the Aya, people describe the DMT as going to see new worlds and being revealed things that they might not even understand, whereas the ayahuasca usually is a 3 or 4 hour journey. And from what I understand, for me and other people, you're being taught very time-specific lessons about your life, the way you treat people, that kind of thing. I don't necessarily expect those type of lessons in the DMT experience, but then again, maybe so.
Because the ayahuasca is, it's a 4 to 6 hour journey, then in the terms of working through various elements of yourself, it's better suited to work with the ayahuasca, because that longer length of time allows you to sort of integrate these lessons and really work through them, whereas the DMT is so short that I think going through those sort of things, it's going to be a slightly different experience.
Right. Now, when Nick and I were looking for ayahuasca shamans, we were approached by some people that said, we have some DMT you can smoke. And we were very hesitant because we wanted to go through the ritual and we wanted to approach the ayahuasca experience first. And maybe we were culturally biased as well to smoke this drug with this pipe or whatever, that we didn't want to do that. We wanted to go for a more spiritual experience. Can you talk a bit about that, as far as do you believe people should do the ayahuasca before the DMT?
I'm not in a position to say what they can and can't do with their own consciousness, of course, but I would definitely recommend that they go through the ayahuasca experience first. I know a lot of people don't have access to that. Often it requires a trip to the jungle and all of this, but the DMT, the whole thing we're tapping into with both the ayahuasca and the DMT is just so extraordinary and just out of this world. That can be very overwhelming, and I think if you're introduced to that in this kind of 50-minute DMT experience, the kind of tendency is to sort of give in to astonishment. And I know from one of my experiences with that, I was so astonished by what I was going through, I kind of opened my eyes and just completely snapped out of the experience. So I think you do need that grounding in these longer sessions with ayahuasca to sort of really get a feel for what you're tapping into, so that when you do go through with the DMT, you kind of have a good handle on things. You immediately know what you're tapping into, and you can sort of just more go with the flow rather than be too overwhelmed with it.
It's interesting because there's many parts of a psychedelic experience. A lot of it are these visuals you see, which can be amazing, and you hear people describing on these YouTube videos, and you see, you know, Jimi Hendrix album covers that look like the experience itself. But there's this whole secondary and tertiary change going on inside your subconscious, which I think some people forget about is happening. Yeah. A lot of times, most of the time, you don't even know it's happening. And then it's only months later, weeks later, you find that you're not yelling at the guy in traffic, and you're not, you know, stressed out all the time, or you're not, you know, drinking 6 pints a night. And so sometimes these changes happen, but oftentimes people don't associate this with the psychedelic experience. They associate, you know, I saw this visual.
Far out.
Yeah, I saw an alien land on my head and that kind of thing. And I don't think, I'm not to diminish those experiences. Those are very important. But there's a lot going on here.
Yeah, and I think people can get a little too caught up in those kind of extravagant visions. But, you know, I often hear people when they refer to things like this, but when I talk to people in person, I never really have them talking about these really far out ideas. It is much more grounded and kind of working within themselves.
Yeah.
So I don't know, I think that kind of idea of these really extravagant levels is, I don't know, some cultural...
It might just be us as humans. We tend to identify the pop culture, the wows, you know, the cool sounding visuals first in our mind, and maybe... and that's another thing this comes to is language, and it's something that we talk about a lot. Terence McKenna talks about. It's like language is something we use to try to communicate with each other, to talk about the real world. And
it kind of developed like to sort of keep us away from dangers when we were kind of long ago in our evolution. You know, watch out for that saber-toothed tiger, and it kind of grew out as a way to sort of explain the outside world.
Right.
But it kind of gets a bit mixed up when you try and apply that same tool, which language is, to sort of describe these more abstract ideas, you know, tapping into certain emotions and talking about these inner realms that people experience with ayahuasca.
Yeah, I find that after my ayahuasca experiences, I don't want to talk. It's almost like I'm cheapening of what happened to try to describe it to someone, and I always fail. So immediately after, a few hours after, I just try to shut up. And then later I can write about it, but even then it's hard to describe, because it's a lot of it's a feeling, of things that you've never had
It's very much tapped into emotion, actually. And I know that, you know, I've gone through my own work of trying to attain similar states of awareness through meditation and things. I know for the longest time I turned it into a kind of mental activity and had no luck with that. But when I got more in touch with my emotions and how I felt in ceremony, then I felt like I was very much on the borders of similar states of awareness that you get through psychedelics. So
you were just becoming more emotionally open to the experiences?
I think the psychedelic experience at its core is an emotional experience.
Okay.
And kind of when you focus on kind of the mental activities of it, it kind of gets away from what it is, I think.
Okay. I just want to say something else on a personal note, and it's something I've thought about. I mean, you know, we've shot 86 episodes of London Real. We've had a lot of people on, a lot of very interesting guests. We talked about ayahuasca, psychedelics. We talked about, you know, all sorts of different things. And confronting something like this head on is something I talked to Alex about, and we both agreed that going away for an ayahuasca ceremony, the connotations to the public, the monkey clan, are a little bit more okay, because you're going away to this ritual, you're with a shaman, and as opposed to going to smoke this extract. I know that a lot of people are going to have a knee-jerk reaction to this and say, Brian, what are you doing smoking this stuff? You know, it's a class 1 drug, it's crack, basically. And I'm more and more aware of this, especially now, as I've told you before, Alex. I guess I've got a family now, and it's like now I have to think about what, you know, the school says or other kids' parents say, and if they see this, it's very likely for them to say, "Oh, Brian is this type of guy. Put him in this type of hole." So it's something that actually makes me nervous and scared, and it also makes me angry, because it seems like this is something that's done me so much benefit as far as the psychedelic category as a person. I wouldn't be with this family if it wasn't for, in my opinion, these substances, these medicines. And so to categorize me as potentially a bad parent because I'm doing it or talking about it, it does make me angry. And so it's one of the reasons I'm doing this episode, because like I feel that to like run away from that, I don't know, that oppression, and maybe it's only in my mind, but like, I think I need to run towards it and just confront it, and whatever happens, happens.
Sure. Well, when you discover something that has huge beneficial effects, the natural thing is you want to share it.
Yeah.
And then you do face that cultural wall of people's perceptions about these things. But like you said, with the ayahuasca, I think a lot of people, they may not understand the psychedelic aspect to it. But I think on some levels they understand this level where you talk about this connection to nature, being in the jungle, if you're in the jungle for these experiences. So when you talk about just solely the psychedelic experience with the DMT, that's when it gets a bit more difficult.
Yeah, there's more judgment.
Yeah.
There's more judgment there, it seems, by people. And yeah, they equate it, you know, like with, I think they equate it with more of a narcotic. And and it's something we have to deal with as a perception. I mean, we're all part of the monkey clan. The monkey clan can lock us up in the, you know, in the prison. They can take away our rights. They can call us criminals. They can, you know, shut our broadcast down. So it's like, you need to be aware of it, but at the same time, I don't think it can change the way you do things in your life. And you know, we've had guests talk. We had Dorian Yates, you know, 6-time Mr. Olympia, who's talked about smoking DMT and how it was very profound.
Right.
And one of the things I noticed about Dorian, I was like, well, when did you smoke it last? And he was like, 6 months ago. I was like, do you have any plans to smoke it again? He's like, I don't have plans to, but I might. And it's something Terence Mckenna talks about. He talks about large doses infrequently to learn things. And Simon Powell talked about that as well. And that makes me more comfortable when I'm about to go smoke dimethyltryptamine today, knowing that it's not an addictive substance, and it's something that people don't run back to.
Especially when it's a difficult experience.
Yeah, and I mean, ayahuasca is something that on a good year, I force myself, well, not for, but I make myself go once every 3 or 4 months, 3 times last year. And that's a conscious effort of going back to the mountain, knowing it's going to be a long night, but I know it makes me a better person. And it's just interesting and makes me feel better about DMT, is that it's not something you hear people, I'm going to do DMT this weekend, I can't wait.
Yeah.
It sounds like something you do infrequently, and then you process that information.
And there's a lot of information to process with that.
Okay.
But yeah, I know what those elements of Terence Mckenna he talked about when, I know he talked to a lot of people and they're talking about their DMT experience and how it's just the most life-changing experience for them. And they said, well, when did you take this? I was like, 10 years ago. I've not touched it since. And it's right, you know, the experience stays with you, and there's a lot to process with it. And you know, if you can get enough from it, then you don't need to go into these things again and again.
Right.
It's not like that.
Yeah, that's interesting for me, because I had 3 ayahuasca ceremonies last year, and I don't have any planned for this year. And part of me thinks, you know, maybe I'm just being not proactive enough, and I'm just running away. But also, I think ayahuasca's there. I think it calls you when it's time, and I think that it's always there, and you don't need to be there every 3 months.
Yeah, it's very important to integrate these lessons into this reality. And I guess some people maybe get a little too caught up in that unusual experience. And I think that's maybe getting away from things.
And I can understand that. I mean, once you drink the ayahuasca, you do get all this information and knowledge, and part of you does want to go back and get more of that knowledge. And you know, after even a week or two after your ayahuasca ceremony, you can be in kind of a different world, and I can see how people can get used to that. But as Simon Powell said, it is important to do something with that information.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. I believe. So, are you scared?
I think everyone's scared when they go through the experience. Everyone's hands shake going into it. But other than that, you know, I've gone through my own ayahuasca ceremonies that I know to an extent what I'm going to encounter. And I've already fleshed out or faced all the kind of bad things about myself I could possibly go through.
How many ceremonies have you been through?
About 40 now.
40,
total,
okay,
yeah.
40. That's a lot. Yeah, I'm a little nervous, but I'm still going to do it. And assuming everything goes well with the people we meet, and yeah, I really don't know what's going to happen. I'm looking forward to it. I think, yeah, nervous isn't the right word, but it
has a sense of foreboding to it, because you just know it's going to be a huge undertaking, a huge experience.
And something you can't really do half-heartedly. You kind of jump in, you kind of jump all the way in. So that is our plan to do that. We are going to leave right now for the airport. We should be back in about 8 hours. It might be late, but we definitely want to get back and tell you our experiences, even if it's late at night, because we wanted to do this in one day so you can see a before and after, maybe especially for me, because I've never touched this stuff before in my life. And there it is. I do want to say the old disclaimer, Kids, don't try this at home. We are not suggesting or that you do touch this stuff. I would definitely recommend an ayahuasca experience first, but then again, it's your own consciousness, and that's the beauty of it. You should have sovereignty over your own body to do whatever you want. So more power to anyone who wants to do one thing or the other. I would read up on this. It took me 18 months before from my ayahuasca, hearing the word the first time, till I did my ceremony.
It's probably the same for me, yeah.
And I was doing research in the back of my mind the whole time, listening, deciding. So something like this, you should take time. I don't think it's ever something to force on someone. I don't think anyone that does psychedelics forces it on anyone. But it's something I think we need to talk about. So that's my disclaimer. Was that good?
It was very good.
That was good. Like I said, once again, we are respecting the laws of the UK, and since we live here, and we're going to go somewhere else. And I don't know, am I missing anything? Anything else to say?
I think that's good. You've covered yourself very well with that.
Yeah, and the only thing I want to say is that anyone who is judging me as potentially a bad person or a bad parent or anything, just please listen to the whole podcast. Listen to a few others. You know, what we are trying to do is trying to find some truth here, and obviously try to understand each other a little bit better and become better, calmer, more productive human beings. So hopefully this is one of those processes. And I don't know what's going to happen to Alex. We might have an experience. We might have nothing. Yep. But we'll come back and tell you.
Yep.
All right. Should we get a taxi?
Let's do it.
All right, man. We will see you guys later today.
Goodbye.
Oh yeah, mic yourself up. That's quite a day, Mr. Ward. Okay. You mic'd up there?
Is that going to be good just there?
Yeah, that should be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. Good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, I'm gonna move that camera just a bit. Were you back further earlier? Maybe? How's that? Good?
Yeah, that's
you
good.
Stay there, that's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, we are back. We are back.
Yes.
That was quite a long day. I'm very tired. After this, I want to go to sleep.
Yeah. So we've got a bit of a dose of caffeine to help us get us.
Yeah, a little coffee on the way in. Alex and I have just returned from our trip where we smoked dimethyltryptamine, and we both had, I guess, quite a profound experience each.
I think you could say that.
Without further ado, I was wondering if you could tell everyone what happened to you, what you saw, what you felt. I'll leave it to you.
Okay, jumping right into it.
Yeah.
So yeah, usually when I go straight into it, there's this instance that comes up, and it came again during this experience. And when I'm smoking this and about to break through, I always have this very odd sensation of some kind of outside observation of me. I don't know what it is. It's a form of a consciousness part of my own self that's kind of looking back at me. But it's a very strong sensation, and
someone's watching you.
Yeah, I don't want to put it in quite those paranoid terms, but it definitely feels to be some kind of external energy that's kind of observing you through this, in a sense. And it's always a very familiar sensation I go through. And I also went through the signature process of having this noise that picks up in frequency and gets louder and louder as this begins to take effect. And the myth of that was this is the noise the pineal gland makes upon activation.
Right, the pineal gland, the third eye.
Which is the third eye, yeah.
Right.
This is, of course, just myth, but it's an interesting idea to think about. So I went into this and just lay back and closed my eyes. And for the first few seconds, I felt like it wasn't really taking effect. It felt like I could see visions behind closed eyes, but it was as if someone had turned off the lights. And so I'm seeing these visions, which is this kind of organic plant life mass of some sort. And I remember as I'm sort of breathing in, each time I take a breath, these plant-like organisms are just filling up with light more and more. And I've seen these kind of plant-like organisms quite a bit before, and it's usually a representation of my physical body. And usually when I go for experiences where the ayahuasca is kind of working through me and kind of evaluating the kind of how healthy I am in my body, then it's always represented with these same kind of organisms. It's
okay.
Very, very unusual. And so when I'm breathing, these plant-like organisms are acting as a kind of curtain or a veil. And when I reach the peak, it's as though this curtain is just sort of whipped away. And I'm very much in my normal state of consciousness. I don't think it affects you kind of mentally at all. You're very much how you are kind of before you went in. It's only the surroundings at that point suddenly are swapped out with an entirely different surroundings.
Okay, so you are kind of you. You're just you in a completely different matrix. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the way I felt as well. Like I was brought into this almost a video game of two-dimensional space where I wasn't in control anymore, and I was in someone else's playing field, is what I felt.
And I think that's why it's so intimidating as well. It doesn't affect you in any kind of emotional basis, so you're there kind of how your normal sense of being normally is, but completely different surroundings.
Right, so it's like taking you literally out of your comfort zone.
Literally, yeah.
Literally.
Exactly like that.
Right.
And so, I mean, what I tapped into with the DMT, and it's again this exact same realm that I keep tapping into time after time with experiences with the ayahuasca. And I felt myself, and I've had a lot of other people report to me as well when they go through this themselves, there's this huge sense of familiarity to this place that you tap into. Okay. It feels like you're tapping into the very core of yourself. And the type of aesthetic design of this place was a kind of multicolored cathedral of some sort.
Okay.
Kind of castle-like. And I remember kind of being in the presence of some other being who was kind of leading me through this space, as though it was kind of welcoming me back almost. And kind of what I felt with this space, what I feel like I've tapped into with this, and I've gone through many experiences with the ayahuasca, is that you're tapping into a kind of part of a more soulful part of yourself. I've gone through experiences with the ayahuasca, and it feels like the experience of life on Earth is that people have this multi-dimensional existence, I call it. It's just ideas I'm playing with right now, but you get this huge sense that you are present beyond this veil that is kind of lifted temporarily with the psychedelic. And it's almost as if you're a soul having the experience of a physical body. I know many other people have had that same type of feeling with it. And
there's some soul there, there's something beyond the physical.
Yeah, there is this sensation that the consciousness you have is something more than just the body.
Okay.
And I could feel that, I could feel this very strong presence of this kind of very force of life, the very force of existence that was living through me. And it was this that was representing these plant-like organisms that when it doesn't have this force of life, this force of consciousness, that there is no kind of life to it. And when I took in the breath, it kind of just glowed full of light.
And did this take you back to a space that you go to when you drink ayahuasca?
Yeah, pretty much the exact same place.
Okay.
I think with the DMT, it kind of takes you to the a more pure experience in a sense, because I know the ayahuasca, it has a lot to do with the shaman calling on these various, we call them inorganic entities of sort.
Right.
I mean, they refer to as spirits.
So shamans in the room, they're chanting, they're channeling these other spirits,
yeah,
typically when you're ayahuasca
which
ceremony.
could be a manifestation of a part of themselves that they give to you to sort of help you heal certain parts of your own inner space, or if they're external, this is kind of speculation.
Right. But with the DMT, it's just 3 guys in a room, and
with the DMT, you don't deal with those external inorganic entities, I felt, and you just get to more a pure form of the experience, I think.
Okay. I felt that the journey was so intense. I mean, it started off for me, and I went right back to these Aztecian geometrics, and I was right back to where it was almost like you're in Mother Ayahuasca's world, no longer your world, where Brian's world, he's always in control of his world, and now you're on this playing field where you're not in control, and and you're in her world, and then it was just really intense. And I felt a real maternal energy, funny enough, which is much like Mother Ayahuasca. And
yeah.
I kind of had a maternal spirit that was actually trying to communicate something with me, but it was like the mute button was on. So she was almost trying to, even yelling at me at some point. And a few times she kind of hit me or hit the camera that was filming her, and it shuddered, and she was trying to tell me something. And then it would flash to where I thought she was holding a baby, and then it was back to her, and there was all of this aggravated energy happening all at once. And then for me, it kind of tapered down. It was almost like there wasn't enough time to learn a lesson.
Yeah, I definitely got that sensation as well. It felt like just as I was getting very much into it, you can feel it just second after second, just sort of slipping away.
Hi, it's Brian Rose. I'm back. It's 24 hours after Alex and I went away to smoke the dimethyltryptamine, and I was just thinking about our post-smoke episode yesterday, and I think I might not have described my experience to you and everything that happened, so I figured I'd just put this supplemental in 24 hours later and give you a few more details, because I think what people really liked about Nick and I when we did the ayahuasca experience is that we got into the specifics of what happened, just so people could understand the ceremony a bit more. And I know we missed that yesterday. I think Alex and I were still a little bit of a kind of a daze and haze. You're back to about 90% after you smoke the dimethyltryptamine, and so I think it may be good for me to tell you what happened to me. Obviously. We left the country and went to a place where we found the DMT, or we had some supplied to us, and you basically you heat it up. It's a powder, and you smoke it. And actually, I was going to go first, because it's my show, and I had never done it before. But I had a very hard time ingesting the right amount, and very little happened to me. So it was almost frustrating at that point. But then Alex went next, and for his first, I think, 4 breaths of the dimethyltryptamine vapor, I thought he was having a similar non-effect, and I was about to say, it didn't work for you either. We thought we had a bum batch, and it was just going to be a big waste of time, this whole episode. But then Alex laid back on the sofa, and he said it was a very powerful experience for him. So I waited an hour, which is, I think, the amount of time you need for your brain to kind of metabolize anything that might be in there. And I went again for a fairly large dose. I kind of wanted to break through, as they say with dimethyltryptamine. I think if you get a mild dose, you might just see some visions and things. But I wanted to really break through into that next level, and I made sure I did. I think it was about 100 milligrams was the dose that we heated up. I think you lose some of that in the process, and I took 4 breaths in. On my 4th breath, I was almost losing reality, but thankfully Alex was there and said, "Brian, take the 4th one," which was good. And then I leaned back, and I was just immediately elevated to like this Aztecian geometric plane, and it reminded me very much so of the geometric shapes I see when I'm in ayahuasca, after I drink the ayahuasca. Except this plane was really intense with like a lot of not anger, but a lot of, I guess, just intensity. And I just felt that I was in someone else's playing field, that I wasn't in charge. And that's always a strange feeling for me, since I'm such a control freak in my environment. I like to choose who I associate with and the situations I put myself into. I like to push myself, but I also like to then come back home. So I was elevated to this plane that reminded me a lot of the ayahuasca plane, but there was no audio because there was no shaman singing, and it was just quiet in the room. And for some reason, I saw this, what seemed to be like a mother entity, but she was almost pixelated, so I couldn't see her face, and she seemed to be urgently trying to yell something to me or something, and she seemed to be kind of running around and fretting, and at some point I thought I saw her holding a baby, or a baby in her womb or something, and a few times she tapped the camera as if I would tap this camera right now to my vision, and it went white, and I was just like, she was almost like yelling at you, but the volume was completely muted. I don't know if you've ever had that experience. Maybe someone yelling at you and you had, earphones on or something. And I was just like, trying just to be with the experience. But also, I was very happy to know that I would not be there forever, because it was pretty intense and out of control. And I didn't feel emotions like I would feel in ayahuasca, where it's a lot of, I feel the pain of other people and their suffering and the fact that I'm not loving them enough, that kind of thing. This was more, just felt like a real intensity and a vibe, and she was trying to tell me something, and there was just urgency, and it was a real, like, zzz, a much more intense plane than I get with ayahuasca. Ayahuasca, there's those visions and there's those emotions, but I didn't feel like, ayahuasca feels like more of a storyline, and the DMT was more of a, here, we're going to take you right up to the hyperspace, and then you're going to come back down. And I knew I was going to come back, and I was feeling, and as the way it was slowly dissipating, I'm guessing after minute 1 or minute 2, I thought, oh, there's a lesson here. She's trying to teach me something about maternalism, motherhood, my future as a father, something. And so I sat back and was like, oh, let me learn the lesson, like I do sometimes on ayahuasca. And oftentimes there's a lesson, and oftentimes there isn't. And I think that's just our own ego projecting as if the universe is telling us something for us. So I think that's just your ego getting in the way. So then I kind of dissipated that and just tried to be with the vision. But I think it was very helpful that I had felt like I'd been in that space before with ayahuasca, because if not, I could have panicked and been like, what is all this crazy new information? But I think I was able just to kind of absorb it and let it in, and then it just kind of slowly calmed down. The visuals went away, and after about 5 minutes, I was pretty much back. The first thing I said to Alex was, that worked. And then he knew. I think he knew by looking at me that I had been there. And then I think I said Jesus a few times. It's just like, it's such a reminder when you go into that level of consciousness, even when you do ayahuasca, and you might have done it 40 times, as Alex had said, but you still forget what it's like when you go into her realm or go into this realm where you're pushing your consciousness. And it's just so interesting because you're not in control. You can't take a break. You can't run away. You just have to deal with it. And it's funny how your consciousness almost fights with itself. It's like some type of hybrid consciousness you have where you're not in control and you're in control, and your ego's trying to process it, but then it can't process it. And it's this weird thing where your brain's trying to figure out what's going on. A lot like what Robin Carhartt Harris said when he sat in this seat about, it's like an orchestra without the conductor. So it's like your main brain hub can't process this information in order to make it sound like a beautiful song. So all these instruments are coming in and it doesn't know what to do with them. And that can be a beautiful confusion, because it can kind of show where you're at as far as a conscious level. As Terence Mckenna once said, I don't know who discovered water, but it definitely wasn't a fish. And I think his point is that when we're in our own consciousness, we don't know we're in it because we're swimming around in this water all the time. And when we perturb it, like we do with Psychedelic, then we get to see the water that we're in is actually water. And so we get to see that what we're in, what we think is just normal life, is this consciousness. And it's just nice to perturb it every now and then, because I think it gives you an appreciation of your own consciousness, allows you to observe yourself outside of your normal day of, I got to get my coffee, I got to get the kids to school, he's trying to screw me at work, I got to get more money to get paid, I got to get more money to buy that thing that I don't need. And I think it's nice sometimes to shock your consciousness and to realize that all of our manifestations in our head are just a construct of our own brain. So that's what's nice about a psychedelic experience, is it by definition will lower your ego, because you get to see the world for what it is, which is not your projection of the world, but it is just what it is. So I just thought I would give you that explanation. I didn't feel like I got in touch with my soul or met aliens. For me, it's just a show. I don't feel like I'm going to another plane of consciousness or seeing other beings. Alex has a different feeling. He feels like he does get in touch with some type of soul that he has beneath it. But we're very different people, and that's the thing about a psychedelic. And what I find beautiful about the psychedelics is they're almost custom tailored to the person taking them. Ayahuasca, for whoever drinks it, will usually confront the issues that concern them the most. And as my shaman says, for me, it's always relationships. And that's what comes up with me. With Alex, it comes up with nature. He has a real feeling with how man coexists with nature and whether we're ruining nature. But for me, a lot of my hang-ups tend to be how I interact with other people, whether I trust them, whether I love them, or all this stuff. So my shaman has been there for all three of my ayahuasca experiences, and afterwards I'm always talking about my relationships to other people, and she just noted that that's something very specific to me and not someone everyone else feels. So there you go. 24 hours later. I feel good. I feel kind of maybe 20% of the effects of an ayahuasca ceremony, as in I feel appreciative for the little things in life, for the sunshine today, for the coffee I had, for people, for my girls. I just have a little more feeling in touch with that we're in kind of a very important and beautiful world, as opposed to some days where I can get fed up and frustrated with trying to get the show out, or trying to work on this, or trying to get more people to watch the show, and like all this other potential nonsense. Today, I'm just kind of appreciating life. And I do feel that way after an ayahuasca ceremony. I would say this is about 20% of that, as in I'm not full on like calling old friends, telling them how much I love them. It's not that, and there's nothing wrong with that, or hugging everyone. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's a lot of times what will happen after an ayahuasca experience, a lot like a near-death experience. But today, I just feel to have kind of more of an appreciation for things, and yeah, and maybe not to take everything so seriously. And so for me, it was just kind of a way to kind of take a notch down. But by no means did it replace an ayahuasca ceremony. And if anything, it makes me believe more the power of a proper ayahuasca ceremony with a diet and with a shaman and with a 3 or 4 hour journey where you really go inside your head. The DMT was interesting. I think it's affected me on a subconscious level to a certain extent. But I really think it was more of a blast off rocket and then right back down to earth. And I don't know if it's possible to learn a lesson in such a short amount of time. I feel like you really need to go through a journey, and maybe even a mental preparation. Because I mentally prepared for the DMT, but it was mostly just fear that I wouldn't, die or do something stupid or overdose, which is almost impossible with the dimethyltryptamine. So anyways, I will turn you back over now to Alex and I talking about the experience. I hope my explanation here has gotten you a little bit of insight into what we actually did and what were the semantics of it. We both smoked once each. We didn't feel the need to do it again, and I don't feel the need to do it again. I think my next entrance back into the psychedelic experience will probably be an ayahuasca ceremony. I'm thinking 3 or 4 months from now. So I know I probably should go back in this year and learn a bit more about myself, but I'm not in an extreme rush. So yeah, that's me. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed listening. I hope this episode helps you in some way. I just want to make sure this show is not a proponent. I'm not telling you to go and try this spirit molecule, dimethyltryptamine. I'm not going to call it a drug, because it's not. And this is in no way suggesting that you do this, but it's just something that you need to be aware of, and something that exists, in nature and in the world. And For me, it took me 18 months before I heard ayahuasca to do ayahuasca. So I implore you to do your own research, do your own learning, and do your own mental preparation before you want to do something like this. And if you don't feel like doing it, don't do it. It's not for everyone. And I think when you need it, you will find it. And it will call to you when you need it. And when you no longer need it, you won't anymore. So now I turn you back to Alex and myself, talking about the aftermath of our experience. I hope you enjoy the show. If you do, please share it with your friends. And that's it. It's about the journey. I think I told you, on the flight back that I felt like at some point I saw this information and then I was like, oh, I'm being taught something, like I feel sometimes with ayahuasca. And I'm like, you should sit back and listen to the message being given to you and the direction you should take with your life. And I sat back and then I was like, okay, you're just being a douche because there's no lesson. And there wasn't. It was just the feelings tapering off. But there wasn't like, after ayahuasca, I walk away with a few distinct pieces of, you need to do this different. You need to treat this person better. And with this, I didn't get that lesson per se.
No.
And not that I expected it.
No. Yeah, I think it is something about humans that they expect this lesson through it. And I did similarly, like in a similar fashion, I felt my ego kick in kind of towards the end of the experience. And it's trying to formulate some kind of idea about what this experience is, what I've learned from it. And it felt like that really got in the way. And I just remember kind of getting the impression, not a spoken word, but this impression of just saying, just be with the experience and stop trying to take control of it.
Yeah.
And I know when I spend time with a shaman in the jungle, Don Lucho, he says this is a common problem that comes up. Is that you just have to let go of that egoic voice and just be with it.
It's funny because it doesn't take your consciousness away completely. And you're trying to fight, you're trying to protect your ego, I guess is a way of looking at it, or your filter of how you want to process this information, while at the same point your consciousness is being pulled away from you and rippled. So it's this strange battle, and I think it is all how you perceive it. As we know with ayahuasca, if you fight the experience, it's going to be a difficult night and potentially not a very fulfilling night. So that was pretty intense. What do you think you can gain from a DMT experience? It was very brief. It was probably 5 minutes long or 6 minutes
potentially,
of the really intense stuff. In the next weeks or months, do you think you're going to take something away from this or not?
Definitely not to the same extent that you would with an ayahuasca experience. But for me, it felt like the DMT experience was just a kind of a reaffirmation of what I've been through with ayahuasca. So it's nice to have that reconnection, in a sense. And I think that's probably how it could be utilized. I don't think the DMT as a core experience on its own can be that beneficial because it is over so quickly. And I think you need that longer time to integrate a lot of the lessons.
And I know a lot of DMT fanatics are gonna, be like, you guys don't understand, and I understand what you're saying, and it can be. Since I had done ayahuasca, it took me to a plane that I was somewhat familiar with, and I was like, okay, we're back here. Now, if I hadn't done that before, it would have been a massive sensory overload. I would have been like, what am I doing in this world? And it might have affected me differently. But I think that those lessons, it's almost like I got, a lesson taught over 3 hours. Like say it was a martial arts lesson and I learned something, as opposed to someone walking up to me and punching me in the head and said, that's a knockout. It was almost like I don't have enough time to process and learn from this. But I did get a glimpse of something which I know exists. And I did feel some of those old feelings about the ayahuasca, like you're not completely in charge. There's these other people, there's these other entities, there's this other message out there. But then it stopped there.
Yeah. Do you think there was some kind of significance to this maternal lady of sort, that it was a kind of representation of things that are happening kind of in your life?
Yes, yes. I'm surrounded by women, and I'm turning 42 this year, and I have never procreated. And as we were talking about earlier, I think ayahuasca, it has this communal, family, clan vibe going on when you drink ayahuasca, and even nature for you, and less so for me, and relationship and almost an avatar thing, which I hate to use that expression, but it's a good comparison.
Yeah, no, I definitely felt that as well. That That's one of the differences that separates ayahuasca from other psychedelics, that it does seem to focus more on these issues of family, community, and friendship. And I think part of my journeys was realizing that it's not really about the ayahuasca, it's about more the communities that are forming around this kind of medicine use. They're kind of being taught these messages of community and kind of working together. It's, I guess looking back, it's kind of similar to how maybe some of these older tribal cultures kind of live their lives. And, you know, there is reasons, I mean, the ancient tribal traditions realized that they needed some kind of symbiotic relationship to nature, and in this way they've survived for thousands of years.
Interesting.
Whereas if you've seen like our modern dominated cultures, they've risen and fallen countlessly.
So it's almost like you're saying the ayahuasca breeds a feeling of community, which results in a community being built.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the larger picture of what's been playing out right now.
And you've seen so many instances. You've been to New York City to be with the shamanic community there. You've been to Peru. You've been all over. So you get to see not only the first-hand experience of the ayahuasca, but you get to see the communities building around it.
Yeah, and I mean, that is one of the strongest things I felt about seeing all of this. And there was this concept that's been playing around a lot of these kind of medicine circles, and that is this movement called the Condor-Eagle prophecy.
Okay.
And the condor is an element that represents these older Southern American cultures that do have their traditions in medicine use like this, and they've kept alive the knowledge of these altered states and more of an alignment with spirit and this reverence for nature, whereas the eagle represents the kind of North American modern cultures like our own, where we've sort of descended into this reverence for physical matter. And we've kind of separated from that sense of community. And part of this movement is bringing together all these old scattered tribes who are now come together, and they're sharing their different medicine practices. And that's kind of what you see happening in kind of North America now.
Gotcha.
And part of this is kind of to merge the condor and the eagle together so that we can merge our two cultures and go together into the future.
Sounds like a plan for me. But I think I might have skipped your maternal question. But so, yeah, I think that this whole, for me, I took ayahuasca the first time a year ago, and I was very non-committal. I had not cohabitated with anyone else, and since then I've moved in with a girlfriend and a young girl, and I'm becoming this whole family man, and the idea of procreation is coming up in my mind more than anything. So I don't think this whole maternal thing is any kind of a surprise. I mean, it was a surprise when I went into the state. I was like, Jesus, who is this lady yelling at me with this baby? But you know, it makes sense that it might be something a bit more symbolic. And you know, again, it's not something I'm going to focus on and try to figure out the next few weeks. I'm probably going to, you know, not think about it. And you know, if I change as a character, then maybe that will change. But yeah, I think there's definitely something going on there when it comes to that. But you know, the one takeaway from the takeaway from this is if you've heard about DMT and you know it's a Class A drug or a Schedule 1, and you know, we've just gone somewhere and smoked it and come back. I mean, I feel 95% right now.
Oh yeah, completely.
I feel fine. I don't think there's any risk in doing it because you kind of inhale it until you can't anymore. So there's not a real overdose risk. And it might sound like a crazy, like a drug culture thing, but it was just kind of a glimpse into, for me, the concept of consciousness. Not even into my own brain, but maybe just the concept that we have a consciousness, and all this stuff is just, you know, chemical reactions to what I'm seeing. And we're all just on a big ride, really. That's the other thing that I take away from it. Like, it's hard to take too much seriously, like building an empire and all this stuff, when you know that you're literally 3 inhalations away from going to the Aztecian board game, where the rules completely changed. And if dying is anything near that, it just shows you almost, I don't know.
Do you think this has any kind of relation to what happens after death and things, these kind of realms you're tapping into? I know it's a big question.
I thought about death. I thought about, okay, well, this is on the way to death, as in this is a reduction of the control of my own consciousness and my own egoic thoughts, going to a plane where I'm not in charge and I can't get the check so we can go. And then death being something even further, where, well, yeah, there's no more thought. And it's quite, yeah, it's quite sobering to know that in death, in my opinion, from what I saw today, it does turn off. You probably saw something different.
Well, it's just touching on the same thing I keep seeing again and again, and I know many people have different interpretations of kind of the realms you encounter. There's certain ideas which are more of a Jungian interpretation, where you're tapping into more the collective unconscious of humanity, because our conscious attention in this very moment is just kind of a wafer thin layer on top, but there's actually a huge amount of going on inside you in the unconscious.
I do believe that.
And a lot of these states are kind of visual manifestations of what's going on in the unconscious. And I don't know, I did feel that for the longest time, but there's just something about a lot of my later experiences that it did feel like I was connecting with some sort, I hate to use the word spirit, but that's really kind of what it feels like. And I've also been interested in kind of tapping into these states more without the use of any kind of psychedelic, because I do think it is more a window into these states of awareness, but it's not an actual doorway. I think it puts you into a certain alignment that allows you to be in the state of mind, but if you're constantly relying on something else to get you into that, then you never really learn how to walk yourself.
Yeah, so you're saying it's a window, not a doorway.
Yeah.
So it's something to see and then to take back and apply in your own life or to learn from?
Yeah, I think so. If you're interested in, I mean, this whole idea is about, for me, delving into the nature of consciousness, and I think it's a very valuable experience to go through to understand what it means to have consciousness in the human body. I know it's a very large subject to tackle, but I think it's an important one to try and understand.
Yeah, and I think it's important that you're saying that you don't need to do this every weekend. You don't need to escape and see these things and see these truths, and that can even be the wrong thing, because ultimately you do have to live in reality. Mm-hmm. And hopefully these things can give you insights into making some changes. What I kind of realized today is that I probably need to go back and drink ayahuasca this year, maybe once or twice, mm-hmm. and that, you know, the battle's not over. And I'm a newbie compared to you. I'm on 3 ceremonies, you're on 40. I know it's not a quantity thing, but mm-hmm. I probably have a lot more to understand in the long run about my own consciousness.
You have many more years on you as well, so you're kind of dealing through a lot that you've been through as well, so it's a lot more to go through. And
call me old?
I think I may have a little bit.
Older.
But, you know, I mean, I've never had a huge amount to deal in terms of my own personal life. I never had any kind of traumatic experiences in my childhood, so I never really had to process a lot of that. And it felt like I kind of got past that very quickly, and my focus kind of descended on trying to understand what these states of mind are.
Right. But also you found a journey in trying to become less shy and to try to get out of your shell more. Right?
Yeah, of course. You know, it really does open you up to more experimental ways of approaching your work. And what it made me realize is it also gave me a message to want to produce artwork about. But it made me realize that doing artwork and then picking up other processes using film, talking even like this, how we are now, it's all different ways of trying to get out the same messages, but it kind of helped me get me out of that art box and put me into other things.
Okay. For someone listening to this or watching us right now that's just, you know, watch us go on this crazy journey with some bumps along the road there were, and even setting this up, I mean, what can they take away if they're never going to do this or they're thinking about it? You know, if you can give them some parting advice about what we've done today or what we've learned, what would you say?
I think we touched on it before, and I think people get a little too drawn into the unique experiences of these altered states of mind. And I think ultimately, if you're not bringing back information to use in your daily life, because we're here to live in this ordinary, mundane reality, and if it's not in any way kind of assisting that, then you have to wonder, well, what is the use of it? And
so make it practical. Make
it practical, yeah. And it's very important once you go through these experiences to come back and ground it into this reality.
Question: when will be the next time you'll be smoking DMT?
My Henry thought I would for a while, so.
Yeah, I'm in
no need to.
Yeah, I'm in no need to, no rush. I kind of saw a glimpse of something. I didn't feel like I needed to go back there as of yet. I know it's there. If anything, it just reminded me of my own fragility of my own consciousness and my own perceptions, and that there's another world right over there that is existing in a parallel way with my own world. So
it does seem to be that way. And you know, we could try and shy away from saying it, but it seems evident that it's something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, and it's an old Bill Hicks. He's an old comedian. He just said, you know, sooner or later you realize this whole thing is just a ride.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to trivialize life, but you do realize that something like today, it's like, you know, all of your emotions and feelings and most important desires and accomplishments you want to make are really just electrical and chemical impulses in, you know, 1 or 2 kilos in the top of your head. And those can be altered very easily. So I guess that's a bit of ego dissolution that I'm describing, all right?
And I think ultimately for me, I guess it might step on slightly metaphysical terms, but I think behind everything, even these experiences you're having with the altered states of mind, that I do see that behind all of that, when you connect to your true self, when you realize you are the entire works of the universe, it's kind of, you see life is living through you, having the experience of separation from all that is. And everything you go through negative, all these trivial things, they're kind of valuable learning experiences for our true self, which is all of existence.
That's deep, man. It's funny because I didn't get an attachment to a soul when I go into these experiences. I don't think there is another level of beings and consciousness. I just see things and I bring things back. So for me, maybe it's my practical mind, but I don't think that there are other even beings and entities per se. I've just seen something that it's very interesting to know it's there.
Yeah, sure.
But also, I'm in my early days, and that could change over time or not. You know, so.
I mean, I've always been very much a skeptic, and I'm not willing to put my foot down and say it's this way or that way. But I think maybe working in art my whole life, it's made my thinking maybe a little more loose, flexible, willing to allow certain ideas come in and at least play with, I think.
Okay. Excellent. I don't know what else there is to say. Just for you, timing. Are you going to be going back to ayahuasca this year? Are you going to take a break? Has that changed after what happened to you today?
I'm taking a break from this. You know, 40 ceremonies is enough. And as I said, I'm trying to find out ways to tap into this more on a meditation basis. I interviewed one guy in America, Alan Steinfeld, he said he came back from interviewing one lady who sat in a dark room for 40 days and said this whole space just opened up right in front of her. And it really did pique my interest when I went through a particular ayahuasca experience, and the next day I started to read more about the life of the Buddha, Siddhartha, and they talked about his awakening underneath the Bodhi tree. And it seemed like they were just describing my ayahuasca ceremony. Okay. And it seemed like that was a kind of thumbs up that, yes, you know, if you put your mind to it, it's something that can be attained through meditation.
So you want to achieve your next level of enlightenment through meditation, right?
I think so. And I think it sounds like something that would be a lot harder, but I think because it's hard, it'll have that more permanent fix.
Yeah. No, I totally salute that, you know. I totally salute that. And I have nothing wrong with the shamans or ayahuasca or people that are trying, but I love it when anyone takes a step back, analyzes their behavior, because you can always come back to it.
Sure.
And, you know,
there is this aspect, you know, no matter how much information you can bring back through the experience, it does take you up and brings you right back down. It's not this permanent state of mind, which is maybe a good thing because it's so overwhelming. But I think there's something to be said about putting the hard work in to attain those states of awareness.
Cool. No free lunch, as they say. Awesome. I just wanted to thank the people on the continent that helped us out. If you want any information about them, don't email me. Don't ask me about it because we're not going to talk about that. If you want to have your own experiences, please research them well. There's lots of information on the internet. In no way are we suggesting you do this. We just wanted to do this for ourselves and address what, in my opinion, was a big elephant in the room when it came to London Real. We've talked about ayahuasca, psilocybin. We've had doctors on, and we've talked about DMT. I'm okay. Alex is okay. He's still extremely good looking, and we're back. We're going to continue on with my day and the show, but thank you for doing this with me.
Yes, thanks for having me.
I wouldn't have wanted anyone else with me but you.
Yeah. All right.
Cool. All right. Well, until then, all the best to everybody, and it's about the journey.
It is indeed. Thank you.
All right. Peace.
And at the end of it, it's not like you get more MDMA. It's attempting to help people be healthy without drugs.
Right.
I think it's what you bring back from the drug experience that changes your state of normal, in a way that makes it so you don't need the drugs.
You want to resolve the issues, not just medicate them daily.
Yeah.